Coming up on our newscast tonight. Seoul and Pyongyang open a direct phone line that connects the leaders of both sides. The line is expected to be used by the two sides prior to their historic summit meeting next week. President Moon Jae-in is listed number 4 in Fortune magazine's latest list of world's greatest leaders, making him the highest-ranked individual as he trails behind only movements or foundations. April 20th is a day dedicated to those with disabilities here in South Korea. Attention is turned to how this group still struggle with lower than minimum wage earnings, as well as various restrictions and discrimination. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. Once again, we begin with the latest on the preparations leading up to the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit. The oddly anticipated direct line of communication is finally set up today, and the two sides tested it out for the first time. Cha Sang-mi at the presidential office has our top story.
On Friday, working-level officials from Seoul and Pyongyang successfully connected the direct hotline and conducted a test call at 3:41 p.m. Seoul time. The historic call lasted for around 4 minutes and 19 seconds. One end of the hotline is at the South Korean presidential office. In fact, it's right on the desk in President Moon's office on the 3rd floor. On the North Korean side, it's at the State Affairs Commission, an executive body headed by Kim Jong-un. The Presidential Secretary of Monitoring State Affairs, Yoon Gon-young, made the announcement.
The historic first call on the direct line between South and North Korea ended just a while ago. The test call took place around 3:41 p.m. The President's personal secretary, Song In-bae, made a call from our side, and it was received by an official from the State Affairs Commission.
Yoon said the signal was great, just like calling someone next door.
여보세요? 예, 잘 들리십니까? 예, 여긴 서울 청와대입니다.
The official from Pyongyang answered, "Yes, this is Pyongyang," and the two introduced themselves. Song said the weather is great here in Seoul and asked how is it there. His counterpart answered that it's good in Pyongyang as well, and the two ended the call after saying they hope for a good result at the upcoming Inter-Korean Summit and will work hard to make that happen. Much of the conversation was not revealed because it's classified. The top office also declined to reveal the name or position of the official in Pyongyang, as the two sides had agreed not to say any more. But the official said North Korea was very eager and positive in its approach. It's still unclear when President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will speak on the phone, but it will be before the summit next Friday. The Blue House official said the phone call was historic, as it was on the direct line for the first time between the two Koreas since their ceasefire 65 years ago. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
The United States and China is all for a formal end to the Korean War. Their support has more significance as the two sides are signing parties of the 1953 armistice agreement. Park Ji-won explains further.
The U.S. Department of State expressed its support for the former end of the Korean War, adding to speculation that the leaders of the two Koreas, during their summit talks next Friday, will discuss a new peace treaty that will replace the current armistice agreement signed in 1953. During a regular press briefing in Washington Thursday local time, State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert said that the U.S. would certainly like to see a formal end to the armistice, and the U.S. would support it. This follows U.S. President Donald Trump's comment on Tuesday that South Korea has his blessing on talks to officially end the Korean War. China has also expressed support for the official end to the Korean War. The Chinese Foreign Ministry's spokesperson Hua Chunying said Thursday during a regular press briefing that Seoul's plans to declare the former end of the Korean War and establish a peace treaty would help bring peace to the peninsula, and that Beijing hopes to play an active role in the process. The 1953 armistice agreement of the Korean War was signed as a ceasefire agreement by the U.S.-led United Nations Command, China, and North Korea. Now that 2 out of the 3 signing parties of the armistice agreement have expressed their official support for the former end of the war, discussions over the new peace treaty, which will govern the next chapter of inter-Korean relations, are expected to become one of the main issues at the Inter-Korean Summit next Friday. 박지원, Arirang News.
North Korea is holding a Workers' Party gathering, the same meeting as the one back in 2013, when its leader adopted the policy of simultaneously developing Pyongyang's economy and nuclear weapons, meaning the regime could make a major policy announcement ahead of its historic summits. Oh Jung-hee sheds light on the possible scenarios.
North Korea kicked off the 3rd plenary session of its ruling Workers' Party's Central Committee this Friday. The Central Committee's plenary meeting is usually held when there's a need for the party to decide or modify its policy direction. At this meeting in March 2013, the Workers' Party adopted Kim Jong-un's signature Pyeongjin policy, which seeks for both nuclear and economic development. And there's rising speculation that in Friday's meeting we could see some changes to that policy. A report from Pyongyang's state-run Korean Central News Agency on Thursday hinted that the meeting will decide on new policies in line with, quote, the important historic period. That's apparently in reference to the Inter-Korean Summit only a week away and the first ever Washington-Pyongyang summit that's currently in the works. With these talks expected to focus on denuclearization, the regime could show its willingness to negotiate on that. It may stress the precondition that the regime's security has to be guaranteed first, or it might choose not to call itself a nuclear state but a strategic country. The party could also show a willingness to improve relations with Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo and seek a peaceful coexistence within the international community. Pundits say the reason for Pyongyang to hold this meeting at this time could be because it needs to provide its people with policy-based justifications for whatever agreements North Korea reaches with Seoul and Washington at the upcoming summits. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea is to handle the expenses incurred from its art troupe and taekwondo demonstration team's visit to Pyongyang through the government's Inter-Korean Cooperation Fund. According to Seoul's Unification Ministry, the fund was set up in 1990 to enable exchanges of material resources and comprehensive cooperation between the two Koreas. 1.6 billion won, or approximately $1.5 million will be used in payments for staff and companies, as well as flight charges and other related expenses. Accommodations, meals, and transportation whilst they were in North Korea have already been covered by Pyongyang. The fund will also be used for other inter-Korean projects such as DNA tests to identify members of war-torn families and to build a digital archive of relics and archaeological material that have been unearthed since 2007 in the North Korean city of Kaesong. While speculation runs rampant on what prompted North Korea to engage in dialogue, for now, Seoul needs to channel all its focus on how to approach the summit that will be held on this day next week, as well as ways to keep the momentum towards peace going after the talks. Our Kim Min-ji met with the lawmakers who represent their parties on Parliament's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee for their take on the rapid developments.
South Korea's rival parties have in general welcomed the first inter-Korean talks in 11 years. Lawmaker Kim Kyung-hap of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea has praised the Moon Jae-in administration's efforts to foster momentum for peace on the peninsula by maintaining pressure on North Korea while at the same time leaving the door open for dialogue. He also applauded the government for being able to set the tempo with the U.S. to prevent a military confrontation and for delaying the allies' joint military drills. Now what's important is how regional players involved restore trust that's been lost.
The increased sanctions against North Korea for its provocations over the past 10 years or so have stoked intense mistrust. Therefore, each side could demand that the other give way first. For any progress toward denuclearization, time is important, and it cannot be rushed. We need to be able to control the situation at our pace and support talks between the U.S. and the North. If any agreement is reached, we need a system that can oversee whether it's being abided by.
The Conservatives, meanwhile, have been taking a more hardline approach and have been pretty pessimistic about the recent developments. Lawmaker Yoon Young-suk of the main opposition Liberty Korea Party stressed that the North could be cheating the international community again and said we can't let down our guard. Until progress is made toward complete denuclearization, he says no carrots because the North could be hiding its true intentions.
It is a kind of temporary calm before the storm. We must achieve a complete and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. But North Korea is more likely to use the tricks in its nuclear dismantlement process. North Korea is only interested in easing international sanctions and throwing up rewards. After the summit talks, the sanctions and pressure should not be lowered until the complete denuclearization of North Korea is achieved.
In the centrist Padamita Party, lawmaker Lee Tae-gyu had a realistic but perhaps more hopeful view. He said while the concerns of the Conservatives are rational given past experiences, we can't allow those suspicions to keep talks from being held at all. He added that the international community is not going to tolerate any more tricks on Pyongyang's part, and that North Korea probably knows it, pointing to its statement that there would be no need to have nuclear weapons if the U.S. ends its hostilities. And with a string of important summits coming up, he stressed Seoul's role becomes extra important from here on.
Now it shouldn't be about who is in the driver's seat. What's important is solving the denuclearization issue. Whether in the driver's seat or the passenger seat, the important thing is that they keep the car moving along the path of denuclearization. The South Korean government can't worry about being the one behind the wheel. It needs to foster a peaceful atmosphere and build a bridge for the other regional players involved to play their roles.
The general consensus for now is that we shouldn't be overly optimistic and that it's important to maintain a balanced yet strong posture. That meaning Seoul should reassure the North of its security in return for denuclearization, but make clear that any tricks will be met with stronger sanctions and pressure from the international community. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Fortune magazine named its world's greatest leaders. President Moon Jae-in landed in fourth place, mainly for his key role in arranging talks between the two Koreas, as well as a Washington-Pyongyang summit. What makes this an even more distinguishing accolade is that there are no other government leaders ranked above him on that list. For details, let's turn to our Park Hee-jun.
Just a week before the historic 2018 Inter-Korean Summit, South Korean President Moon Jae-in earns a new accolade. Fortune magazine has named President Moon as the fourth greatest leader in the world in its Spring 2018 Greatest Leaders list. President Moon is the highest-ranking individual on the list, with the top 3 spots being taken by movements or foundations. He earned the ranking for his diplomatic approach of extending an olive branch to North Korea. Less than a year has passed since President Moon took office in May, but already he's had a pivotal role in bridging the gap between Pyongyang and the international community. He brought the Kim Jong-un regime to the negotiating table, which has led to the arrangements for the Inter-Korean Summit and the possible U.S.-North Korea summit in late May or early June. The recent breakthrough began with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, when North Korea accepted Moon's overtures and took part in the Games. In the eyes of Fortune magazine, such progress could be a possible prelude to reconciliation between the two Koreas. Fortune also credited President Moon for his efforts in creating a fairer economy through raising the minimum wage, expanding health coverage, and tackling the issue of Korea's powerful chaebol conglomerates. Meanwhile, Moon was listed in Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people of 2018. He was included in the leaders category alongside U.S. President Donald Trump, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
President Moon vowed to improve Korea's economy by helping to foster new industries and create quality jobs. At the opening ceremony of a new research complex, he outlined his blueprint to achieving that goal, which includes relaxing regulations and boosting investment in scientific research. Kim Mo-kyun has the full story.
정부는 여러분이 마음껏 연구하고 사업할 수 있도록 혁신 성장 생태계를 조성하겠습니다. 신기술, 신제품을 가로막는 규제를 풀겠습니다.
President Moon Jae-in made these remarks at the opening ceremony of the new LG Corporation Research Complex in Western Seoul on Friday. During his speech, the South Korean leader stressed the importance of innovative growth in boosting the nation's economy, adding that he would greatly enlarge the budget for scientific research to some $2.3 billion before his term ends in 2022. President Moon congratulated LG for the opening of the complex and asked the conglomerate to fulfill its goal of creating up to 190,000 jobs at the complex every year, which would give a big boost to the government's job creation targets. At the opening of the complex, LG's Vice President Koo Bon-jun spoke of the tech giant's hopes that the new research center named LG Science Park can help prepare the nation for the fourth industrial revolution.
In a country that lacks resources, people and technology are the best assets. Investing in research and development projects and fostering more professionals are the fundamental answer for a company competing during the fourth industrial revolution.
He said that the research complex will mainly focus on enhancing electronics and chemical technologies, especially OLED displays, automotive parts, fifth-generation networks, and artificial intelligence technologies. He also said that researchers from different fields will be able to form connections more easily at the complex, and added that LG plans to invite various people working for small and medium enterprises, startups, and universities so that they can utilize LG's technology and infrastructure to become a global competitor in the industry, setting a good example of shared growth in Korean society. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
It's looking less likely that South Koreans will be able to vote in June on amending the country's constitution. For that to happen, Parliament needs to pass a revision to the National Referendum Act by next Monday to leave time for other necessary legal procedures. The Democratic Party hoped to have the act revised by Friday, but rival parties are still deadlocked over other issues. The ruling bloc urged the opposition to cooperate, highlighting a public vote alongside the June 13th local elections was a promise made to the people. But the main opposition demanded the Democratic Party first accept a special probe into a scandal involving a ruling party lawmaker believed to be linked to online comments manipulation. The reason the referendum law has to be changed is because the existing version was ruled unconstitutional in 2014 for limiting the voting rights of Koreans overseas, and as such, it remains null and void. The nation's chief economic policymaker is in Washington for the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting. On the sidelines of the event, he sat down with the heads of the IMF and World Bank to exchange views on a number of pressing issues. Kim Hye-sung shares with us what was discussed.
South Korea's Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon met with IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde in Washington on Thursday to discuss currency market issues. On the sidelines of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting, Minister Kim said Seoul is working on raising the transparency of its forex market, including making its currency market intervention records public. He said the government is looking into the frequency of disclosing the data while taking South Korea's economic structure and other countries' disclosure cases into consideration. According to Seoul's finance minister, Lagarde said the IMF has repeatedly recommended South Korea improve its forex market transparency, adding that disclosing the records will help support the country's macroeconomic stability. She added that the negative effects won't be too pronounced given South Korea's strong economic fundamentals and financial market environment. Minister Kim is scheduled to meet U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin on Saturday to discuss the same issue. Meanwhile, the finance minister also met with World Bank chief Jim Yong Kim. They agreed to expand cooperation in areas like infrastructure projects in developing countries through funding and knowledge-sharing programs. In addition, Seoul's finance ministry said the government will increase funding to the World Bank's regional office in South Korea to expand operations. Minister Kim also invited the World Bank chief to the annual meeting of the African Development Bank Group, which will be held in Korea's southeastern port city of Busan in May. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Korea and China held their first high-level economic talks after a two-year hiatus in Beijing. On Friday, Seoul's delegates led by Second Vice Foreign Minister Cho Hyun met with Chinese Vice Minister of Commerce Gao to discuss ways to boost or improve economic cooperation at the 22nd Joint Korea-China Economic Committee meeting. Among the topics discussed, Korea asked China to ease visa requirements and lengthen the period that Korean visitors can stay in that country in order to grant Korean students in China more opportunities to get employed there. The two sides also discussed environmental issues such as the worsening air pollution due to fine dust. The vice ministerial meeting follows President Moon's agreement with his Chinese counterpart a few months ago to further foster bilateral economic ties. Korea Self-Festa, a massive shopping and tourism festival, is back. This year, it's likely to be shorter than usual, lasting about 2 weeks. But smart shoppers can find solace in the fact that it could feature bigger discounts. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy is considering shortening the event from its usual period of an entire month. Korea Self-Festa will also likely run after the Chuseok holiday with huge bargains to attract visitors and boost sales. Details will be confirmed in a meeting of the heads of various ministries after discussions with retailers and suppliers. April 20th is the National Day of Persons with Disabilities here in Korea. Various events are held across the country to mark the occasion. But at the same time, according to our Kim Ji-yeon, there are growing calls for efforts to help raise the quality of their life.
In Korea, around 2.8 million people are estimated to have some kind of disability, according to the Ministry of Health and Welfare. Among them, 1 in 2 disabled people were aged 65 or older, while 8 out of 10 disabled people were found to be suffering from chronic diseases such as high blood pressure and diabetes. Despite their vulnerability to these illnesses, many disabled people's living conditions prevent them from taking care of their health by themselves. According to data by the Ministry of Employment and Labor, the average monthly wage of the disabled was around $386. That's around just 30% of the earnings made by those receiving the minimum wage. And 1 out of 4 disabled people were found to live alone. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 cases of restriction and discrimination against the disabled are reported to the National Human Rights Commission of Korea each year, despite a 2008 law prohibiting such cases. These cases range from limitations in accessing facilities or transportation to mistreatment and not being able to receive proper information. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need before planning your weekend. Michelle, the warm weather's come early, which is nice, but the air quality has gotten even worse. I guess we'll have to plan something to do indoors this weekend.
Daniel, although you might want to plan a picnic with your friends or family looking up at clear sunny sky tomorrow, I suggest that you don't, because tomorrow there will be high levels of dust wherever you go, and there are also high levels of ozone, which is formed when the strong sunlight breaks up the nitrogen oxide in car exhaust. Now, ozones can't be blocked by a mask, so avoid walking where there are lots of cars so that you can't damage the respiratory system. Now, temperature-wise, it's going to be warm and comfortable, so rising up to 11 degrees Celsius in the morning, while Daegu Gyeongju begins at 12 and 9 degrees. Into the afternoon, it'll feel similar to today's, Seoul topping out to 25 degrees, Gyeongju 30, and Busan at 20 degrees. But there is rain on the way on Sunday, starting from the western part of the country. Now, this will cool us down a bit. Let's hope it improves the air quality and also the dryness as well. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you this week. Thank you for staying with us. Here's wishing you an incredible weekend.